Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Erica once again and we're back for another video. Today's video is pretty exciting because I got new art supplies. I got really curious about alcohol markers. I've honestly never tried them because back in the day there used to be only Copic, I don't know how you pronounce it, please correct me if I'm wrong. And they're not exactly very price friendly for students and or young professionals. So when I found out recently that there have been new brands like Ohuhu, I got really excited and bought myself a couple. So just so we're clear, I bought these all myself. These are not sent to me or sponsored in any way. So the first set that I'm unboxing is a skin tone set. Since I'm doing the 100 Heads Portrait Challenge, I thought this would be great in speeding up my process and finishing the challenge. I really appreciate that they sent these stubs where you can swatch the markers, so it saves time. I also got myself a small set of acrylic markers to support the alcohol markers when it comes to highlights and making corrections and stuff. For the price I paid for, I'm quite impressed with the quality, to be honest. Not to mention they add these swatch stubs where you can swatch the colors. So I'm quite impressed. I chose this set because you can see the level of the ink, so that's quite convenient. I originally wanted the pastel set, but they were out of stock. So I got this mid-tone set instead of the regular set because they seem to have lighter colors. And that's what I really need, especially because I'm going to be doing portraits with them. Again, I'm impressed with the packaging for, what you pay for. But I was most impressed that they sent this. This is, I think, something you put underneath the Sketchpad so that you would protect it from bleeding from the alcohol markers. The only thing I don't like is that the colors are jumbled up. It would have helped if they kind of organized it in such a way that it's organized by color. So I really appreciate that Ohuhu sends these swatch cards. For people who have OCD like me, keeping things organized like this and convenient as you can attach it to the sets, it really solves that, anxiety inside me. So far, I think these colors are usable. I wish I had the pastel set, but for now, I think these could work for the portraits, most especially these skin tones. I'm most impressed with these alcohol markers, to be honest, and I like that they sent a black swatch card and a white swatch card so that you can basically have an idea on how it works on dark colored paper and light colored paper. And with this process, I'm actually getting the hang of picturing it in my head, how I'm gonna make the alcohol markers and these acrylic markers work side by side to create my portraits. I also caved and got myself a table easel because it's been hard painting on a flat surface and shooting at the same time. But you'll see later, since I'm still figuring things out, you'll see my head, my annoying head. It's honestly very interesting to see the development of my whole table setup. So as you can see here, I've been sketching up in advance. That way I can do I can do this challenge a lot more faster. Now I wanted to skip a spread because I want to figure out how I can make gouache and the alcohol markers as well as the acrylic markers work together side by side, because for sure the alcohol markers will be bleeding, hence this tool that they included, which I'm so happy with. But more than that, it will still bleed to the other side of the page, but I'm hoping that gouache will cover up the errors of those bleeds so that I don't waste the page, basically. So I originally planned this portrait for gouache, so I got my kneaded eraser to lighten up the sketch first. And so begins my annoying head challenge. So I'll zoom you guys up so that I can minimize my head, because like I said, I'm still trying to get used to the setup. I know it seems like I'm trying to make excuses, but it is what it is. And I don't want to waste these clips because I think it's quite useful, to be honest, and there's so much to learn from it. So these are the colors that I decided to work with. And the first thing I usually do is to swatch them. Well, this is my first time doing it. I haven't worked with markers at all because, again, they were quite expensive and I never really thought I could ever work with markers because of the price. So I decided to swatch them on the paper, not only to test it on my Sketchpad, but also to have a code instead of looking back to the swatch cards. And as you can see, as I've predicted, it bleeds. So I'm hoping that the gouache later on, we'll test it with gouache later on. Alright, let's begin. I really have no experience with markers. I have said it 3 times already. So I'm just winging things. I usually started with the lightest color. That way I'm not going to be too scared because alcohol markers cannot be correct. It's permanent. So I use the lightest shade that I have to mark the shadows for now. I'm thinking of working from light to dark because this is not like watercolor where I can make corrections. Yes, I have the the acrylic markers, but I don't have enough to be able to correct all the mistakes if ever. And as you can see, my annoying head, please forgive it. I will do better in the next video, I promise. I wasn't sure here if I could blend the markers, which is why I've just been layering and trying to figure out if it'll kind of create that shadow or the effect that I want. And then, as you can see, I started adding swatches of other colors because that's what I thought I needed. As I was working on this, I thought alcohol markers were much like watercolor in a sense, but I love how I'm able to create these textures and I can see the strokes because I don't like those super fine-tuned paintings. I really like stylized and I'm going for cubism, right? And I feel like these alcohol markers are kind of leading towards a style that I want, which I haven't really figured out. But we'll just go with the flow and practice. I think this first one turned out pretty well. I wish I had a better color for the lips, but it works. Alright, let's move on to the second head. Okay, so I'm so embarrassed to show you guys this head because this one, it started out well and then I just ended up not liking it. But again, documenting it for the process just to show you guys that nothing is perfect. So I started with a swatch because I was happy with how I used it for the first one. And like the first one, I started with the shadows, so figuring out the contours of the face and painting the planes basically. So I turned the face into a geometric shape basically. And then this time, instead of using multiple colors, I tried using the same alcohol marker to create depth. So basically I let the marker dry first and then I put another layer of the same color. And as you can see here, I was actually happy with how it's turning out. So while I'm waiting for it to dry, I use other colors and blend it together, and then I go back to the light color and then I blend it again. So it was a great process so far here. I was quite happy with where it's going. And then after this, later on, you guys will see how it's just gonna go downhill from there. I try to salvage it, but it is what it is. So here, it's still pretty decent. I wish I just pushed through with the first method instead of starting exploring with other colors like this. I went back to how I started the previous portrait and then I started adding colored pencil. I don't know what got into my head that I started using colored pencil. At first it was because I didn't have the right shades for the face, and then I realized I could have just changed the colors, right? But no, I tried to make it look like a portrait, and then I was trying to salvage it. And then it just went downhill from there. And then I try to salvage it with the alcohol markers. I don't know. I think I was tired. I really don't know what got into me. So it basically just turned into like some sort of mixed media piece, which I'm not too happy about. I mean, it doesn't look too bad. It's just that, I really don't like it. I really don't. But, you know, it's one of the artworks. And again, nothing is perfect. And I didn't want to overthink it because I spent like, for the first one, it took me 20 minutes to finish the dude, considering it's my first time trying the markers. And then this one took me about 2 hours because I was just trying to salvage it and stuff. So I got super frustrated. So right after this, I actually took an hour break or maybe longer. I ate and took a break before I proceeded with the next one. So here, as predicted, it bled. So we're going to test it out now with gouache, how we're going to be able to salvage these pages. That way we're not going to be wasting paper. So I'm going to be starting with a little girl over here in this corner. I know you guys can't see it right now because of the bleed, but hopefully throughout the video you guys will see it as I paint through the process. I decided to go with yellow for a change, and I used that same method where I have a base color before I start painting on the portrait, because this time we're trying to cover up the bleed of the alcohol markers. So I wanted a thicker base. So here I was just building up the color as usual. And as I was progressing through the face, I realized this can definitely work. So I'm quite happy with how things are turning out. And this texture and look is actually what I'm going for, because this kind of gives off like the oil painting feel, because I used to do oil painting as well. But for health reasons, I kind of stopped. And that's why I fell in love with gouache, because it can give off a similar finish to oil. So for the last portrait that we're going to be doing is this lady over here. I don't know why I started with green, but I just thought that it would be a nice pop from the other colors that we have used for all the portraits for this video. So as usual, I start with setting up the shadows with the base color, which is, in this case, it's green. But this time, I tried to layer with the same color. So I'm starting to get the hang of making my strokes a little bit more bold. I think having better and thicker flat brushes like this, or better yet, I think having a bigger painting or a portrait to paint makes it a lot easier for me to use bolder strokes because of the limitations of how big my brushes are and so on and so forth. But here I was just building up the colors. And this time, I think from what I learned in using the alcohol markers, I was able to apply the same color theory and concept with this painting. So I seem to be using bolder colors, which I'm eventually able to blend using the midtones. So I was quite happy with how this portrait was turning out. And I love the fact that it's able to cover up the bleed from the previous page when we were using the alcohol markers. And then I decided to use the acrylic markers this time to add a little bit of highlights and to create pops in the portraits. So I'm starting to figure out my style and working around these portraits with all the tools that I have now. So I'm quite happy with them. So I'm quite happy with this. I will definitely be using this from here on out. One side will be alcohol markers and the other side will be gouache. That way it covers up the bleeding part. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video and see you next time.